Okay, I'm seeing the thumbs up. That's great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for returning for this afternoon session. It's really my honor to introduce Dr. Sharyn Potter. I've worked with Sharyn over the last few years, but I know that is not her first foray into work with the Defense Department. And to give you a little bit of background, Dr. Potter is a professor in the Department of Women and Gender Studies at the University of New Hampshire. She's also the co-founder and executive director of research at the Prevention Innovations Research Center, which really focuses on ending sexual and relationship violence and stalking. She's also the co-founder and vice president of research for Soteria Solutions. And Dr. Potter's background is really relevant to prevention, not only based on what she's done at the University of New Hampshire and for the military, but the many organizations she's worked with in different areas of higher ed, with high schools, in terms of bystander intervention, engaging community members to work collaboratively to reduce sexual violence and relationship violence. And most recently, Dr. Potter did some work with the military on the creation of a prevention program and evaluation toolkit. And that's been an incredible resource for our force. And so I know she's going to have some valuable insights for you today. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Potter. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jess and Joe Storch. I'm going to share my screen and go ahead and get started. You all can see this, Joe? Okay. So I want to thank the Office of the Secretary of the Navy, and in particular, Ms. Cohen, the Director of the Department of the Navy's Sexual Assault, Sexual Harassment, and Suicide and Prevention Response Office, or SAPRO, and Jess, Dr. Gallus, and their incredible colleagues. And it's always incredible to have the opportunity to work with Joe Storch and his amazing SUNY colleagues. So thank you so much for inviting me today. So just like Dr. Gallus said, in 2006, I co-founded the Prevention Innovations Research Center at the University of New Hampshire. And we develop and administer and evaluate prevention strategies that engage bystanders to recognize problematic situations and take action. So today, for the next little bit of time, I'm going to discuss 5 critical lessons that I've learned developing these prevention strategies over the years. So just to give you a bit more background, at the Prevention Innovation Center, we've really spent the better part of 20 years developing and administering and evaluating prevention strategies to engage all members of the community in sexual violence prevention. And some of these strategies include the Know Your Power Bystander social marketing campaign, the Bringing in the Bystander high school and college programs. We also have 2 bystander intervention video games that we've developed and piloted with NIJ funding, Mindflock and Ship Happens. We have a prevention and safety app for college and universities that we're using on 24 college campuses called USafe US. And most recently, we've just developed a prototype, a safe student app for high school students with an accompanying dashboard for administrators that addresses the 5 most common types of violence that high school students face, including bullying, identity and sexual harassment, as well as dating violence. And I think what's really important about the work that we do at the Prevention Innovations Research Center is all of the prevention strategies that we develop have been developed using scientific methods. So all of our prevention strategies start with a formative evaluation process where we gather information from the target audience, and we use this information and the insights to develop our prevention strategies. We do a lot of pilot evaluation where we work with the target audience, And then because we are dealing with human beings and prevention, we administer quasi-randomized controlled trials where we use pre, post-test, and follow-up test evaluation. And through all of these different levels of evaluation, we're constantly gaining and incorporating target audience feedback into the prevention strategies we develop. And in a few minutes, you'll understand why using the target audience is so important. So for the next 35 minutes or so, I'm going to discuss 5 critical things that I think you all should know about prevention strategies. But before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the science of prevention and why we need to really move beyond prevention efforts focused on the individual. So just bear with me for a little bit, a tiny bit of a theoretical background. We can't help ourselves, we're researchers. So in my work, I take a scientific approach to prevention. And so we all know that all forms of sexual violence, including sexual assault, harassment, relationship violence, and stalking, are preventable. So we use data to really understand and define the problem. And in using this data, we're able to identify variables that decrease the likelihood individuals will experience violence, and also identify those factors and those variables that increase the likelihood that individuals will perpetrate or become victims of violence. And we use this empirical research to develop prevention strategies that are knowledge and skills based. So prevention strategies developed, with intense research are expensive. So what we want to do is make sure that the strategies we're developing are effective. They do not have unintended backlash effects or exacerbate the problem. So one of the things that we're able to do as we're developing is really test for any kind of potential negative effects. And that's really why evaluation is such an important component of the development and administration of prevention strategies. And the other thing I want to talk about before we talk about the 5 kind of critical lessons about prevention is the social ecological model, the last piece of theory. So I kind of like to think of this image of the social ecological model as a checklist, as it provides researchers and practitioners with a way to see, to ensure that the prevention strategies that they're developing and administering and evaluating leverage all the levels of the social ecological model. And unfortunately, today, most sexual violence, and I use the term sexual violence to encompass sexual assault, sexual harassment, relationship dating violence, and stalking, just so that I don't have to say those words as we go through the whole time. But so most sexual violence prevention efforts are focused on one level of the social ecological model. So for instance, in many colleges and communities, there's programs to assist victims, which we would consider an individual level program. At some colleges, there's bystander intervention strategies where participants learn to identify and intervene in situations where sexual violence is occurring or has the potential to occur. But despite these efforts, there's still so much victim blaming that occurs at the community and societal levels. And therefore, prevention programs need to go beyond the individual and relationship levels and really change how campus administrators, how campus police, and the community responds to victims and perpetrators. And we also need to change the policies that inform the responses to these crimes. When we only address one level of the social ecological model, the prevention efforts do not address the myriad of societal factors that facilitate all aspects of sexual and relationship violence, stalking, and harassment. And I added a social ecological model published by the DoD a few years ago. I use this model a lot in the work I do because it really illustrates the powerful influence that military leaders have, but also leaders in institutes of higher education, corporations, and other types of organizations. What's really important to realize is the tone that leaders set and the behaviors they model have implications for the organizational culture as a whole, but also the interactions that occur within the organization between employees and those interactions that employees have with their outside partners and organizations. So this social ecological model with the addition of leaders, I think, is a really helpful tool for us to think about prevention. And by leveraging all levels of the social ecological model, we increase the odds that the prevention efforts that we're developing will be effective and will facilitate long-term cultural change that will, again, reduce sexual violence and other harmful behaviors. And from the larger public health literature, we've seen examples of these effective prevention efforts that move beyond the individual and address all levels of the social ecological model, right? Think about vaccination uptake, anti-smoking efforts, anti-drunk driving efforts. By really understanding the functional relationships between the different levels of the social ecological model in different cases and across different locations, effective sexual violence prevention responses can be identified, initiated, and sustained. So now that I've given you a little bit of context for how I think about prevention, I'm going to share 5 critical lessons that I've learned while developing, administering, and evaluating prevention strategies. And I'm also going to give you some real life examples so you can kind of see how I think about the universe of prevention. Okay, so from the 30,000-foot view, the 5 critical prevention strategy insights that I'll offer you today, and I'll talk about each of these in more depth, is that prevention is not awareness. Number 2, there's 3 levels of prevention that requires different sets of skills. Number 3, you really need to know who your audience is to ensure your prevention strategies will resonate. And number 4, by harnessing protective factors, you can build environments where you want to work and live. And finally, number 5, the prevention equation components, incorporating all components of this prevention equation that I'll show you will increase the efficacy of your prevention efforts. Okay, so now we'll just kind of work our way through this list. So I guess if you will just remember one thing from this session today, please remember that prevention is not awareness, like I beg of you. So the fun runs, the teal ribbons, the pancake breakfasts with the print of the teal ribbon in the middle of the pancake that people do to raise awareness about the problems of sexual harassment and assault are not effective in reducing sexual assault and harassment. So I'm sorry to burst any bubbles. But this is because these are awareness activities. And through these awareness activities, participants are gaining knowledge about the problem, but they're not gaining the skills to address situations where sexual violence has the potential to occur, is occurring, or in the aftermath of the occurrence. So when we reduce harmful behaviors, it's just not enough to know the behavior is harmful. We need to have knowledge of the problem and awareness of the problem, but we also need skills to address the problem. And then we need to have the confidence to be able to use these skills. So the advocates and public health professionals who focused the nation's attention during the mid-1970s on the fatalities attributed to drunk driving crashes were successful in reducing alcohol-related traffic fatalities from 60 to 31% between the mid-70s and the mid-2000s. And this reduction is because these advocates and public health professionals made the public aware of the problem of drunk driving, and they educated the public in what they needed to do to reduce drunk driving and the related morbidity and mortality. So actions like identifying a designated driver to bring everyone home safely, taking away someone's keys and finding them an alternative way home now became acceptable behaviors because of the work that these advocates and public health professionals did. So national campaigns taught ordinary people that friends don't let friends drive drunk. So the public was made aware of the problem, and then they were given skills to help reduce the drunk driving fatalities and injuries by leveraging the different levels of the social ecological model. So just to recap lesson one, prevention is not awareness. In order to have effective prevention, we need to have awareness and skill building as well. So moving on to lesson two. There's 3 levels of prevention, and these 3 levels of skill-based prevention assume that members of the community can identify harmful behaviors and they have the skills to safely act. So primary prevention strategies can stop sexual violence before it's perpetrated by providing community members with knowledge and skills to safely intervene. Secondary prevention strategies can be used to stop sexual violence before or while it is happening, and also to address the immediate needs of the survivor. And finally, tertiary prevention strategies offer empathic and effective responses after the violence has been perpetrated. So I'm gonna just dig a little bit more into each of these levels of prevention. So in order to stop violence before it's perpetrated, we need comprehensive primary prevention strategies that are evaluated and that meet the target audience where they are cognitively and intellectually. And we need to build participants' knowledge, and we also need to build their skills and competence. And then we need to regularly reinforce these types of prevention messages with different types of activities, right? We have to deliver the messages in all sorts of different ways, and not the death by PowerPoint that I'm currently inflicting you all with. So the first level of prevention is primary comprehensive prevention. So when people have secondary prevention skills, they're able to identify that there's a situation where violence may be being perpetrated, or that violence has the potential to occur. So we were doing a focus group a number of years ago, and a participant described a situation where she was at a party and she noticed that one of her fellow party goers was sitting on the couch, just kind of taking a breather. And this other person sits down next to the party goer who's taking a breather on the couch and starts kind of moving in on her space, on the person who's relaxing their space, and starts kind of like, you know, trying to touch her, moving over, right? You've seen those uncomfortable situations. And the person who was just sitting there relaxing was clearly uncomfortable. And the participant who was in our focus group noticed her fellow party goer who was quite uncomfortable. And so what the participant in our focus group told us is she started a conga line. And she was able to move the conga line around the party and extract the party goer that she thought looked really uncomfortable sitting on the sofa from the situation. So what this person knew was they knew they were able to identify a potentially harmful situation, and they had the skills and the competence to creatively remove that person from the potentially harmful situation. So secondary prevention is one of the things that's really important, is being able to recognize and stop violence while it's being perpetrated or before it's about to be perpetrated. Secondary prevention is also about being able to recognize that a harmful behavior has occurred and to have the skills to help the survivor in the immediate aftermath. So having the awareness to understand that someone has been harmed and to be able to respond to them in a trauma-informed manner by saying something like, I believe you, it's not your fault, and offering to help get them professional support is an important component of secondary prevention. And finally, tertiary prevention is having the knowledge and skills to offer the follow-up support for victims dealing with the long-term consequences of the violence perpetrated against them, and educating and providing support for the community. So just to recap, lesson 3, there's 3 levels of prevention, and these 3 levels require different levels of skills as well as recognition in order to be able to carry out these 3 levels of prevention. And we need to develop prevention strategies that are knowledge and skills based and involved everyone in our community. So lesson number 3 is the importance of knowing your audience, or the term we've coined at the Prevention Innovations Research Center, social self-identification. So Prevention 101 is identifying your target audience, right? So we need to know who we are talking to. And so for those of us who are parents, we know that we talk to our toddlers and teenagers in different tones, with different warnings and different examples. So in prevention, it's no different. Prevention messages that resonate with first-year college students or enlisted sailors are most likely not going to resonate with campus or DoD leadership. So in my research, this term we've coined, social self-identification, describes the importance of target audience members being able to recognize themselves or their friends in the situations highlighted in the prevention strategies. So we've shown through our research that the greater the likelihood that the target audience members see themselves, people that look like them, familiar context, language that sounds the way they talk, the more likely the prevention strategy resonates. And so from our research, we've learned the importance of identifying and seeking insight from the target audience in the development of all of our strategies, from our video games to our apps to our in-person programs. And depending on the prevention strategy we're developing, our target audience members are involved in every step of the development. So when we developed our social marketing campaign, the target audience members, our college students, were involved in the searching for locations for the photo shoots and helping direct the photo shoots. In the apps that we're piloting right now, the college students and high school students are working with us on dissemination plans. So over the years, we've devised strategies to gain insight from the target audience and the different constituents in the large target audience. And one of our most successful methods is food. Hence, you see the 3 food groups of 18 to 24-year-olds, right? The pizza, fizzy drinks, and chocolate. And what we do is we administer focus groups in different locations, whether it's in high schools, on military posts, on campuses, at different times of the day, so that we can really capture the diversity in the target audience as we develop our prevention strategies. And we've replicated these strategies with different groups as we've developed different bystander intervention strategies. About 10 years ago, we had the opportunity to adapt and pilot our Know Your Power Bystander Intervention social marketing campaign for a US Army post in Europe, or USARA. And so during the adaptation process, we were lucky enough to be able to facilitate focus groups with the soldiers who were on the USARA post in Europe at the time. And we showed them some of the images that we were using at colleges and universities in the United States to begin to get ideas for how to adapt these images for the soldiers that were stationed in Europe. And one of the things that sticks out is that the soldiers could not get over the hair on the men in the images of the US college students. Like every other sentence was like, but we would never have hair like that. Our hair would never be that long. And as we focus grouped around the country and adapted, we find that people really want to see themselves in the prevention strategies, whether it's an app, an in-person program where they want to have examples that are familiar and relatable. Because when people see themselves, whether it's in a video game or a social marketing campaign or an in-person program, they can relate to the situation, and you can kind of begin to capture them. For so often, people see these prevention messaging and they say, oh, I would never go to a party where people wear bathing suits in the winter, so this doesn't apply to me. They're always figuring out reasons why the prevention message doesn't apply to them. So by really working with the target audience and really figuring out who they are and what messages resonate with them, you can begin to have effective prevention strategies that resonate with your target audience. The other thing that we've also learned over the years is the importance of getting the language correct. And so one of the things we do is when we have an image that we think is good to go, that a draft image that we're liking, we kind of present an overview of the situation that we're trying to show and what we're trying to capture. And we ask the soldiers, college students, high school students to kind of explain how this scene would go down. What would the dialogue look like? I say, me as a mom of teenagers can't quite capture that dialogue, so you need to help us. So we have the folks in the focus group do surveys, they fill out these kind of images, we compile and analyze this data, and then we begin to develop the images. And we've really found that language matters. Expressions and dialogues are regional, like so many of you know. In New England, we use the term wicked all the time, but when we showed images with the term wicked in it to students in California, they were like, no, we don't use that term here. We use the term dude, where people in New England really don't use the term dude. So really being cognizant of the different terms, the different languages, because again, you're looking for reasons to hook the folks in your prevention strategy. The other thing is that from the focus groups, we also learned how the men and women at that post interacted with each other. There's the perpetrator whose face we never show is bragging about a sexual assault. And what we learned is that, even though there's women at the table, it wouldn't have been realistic for women to call the male perpetrator out. It needed to be another male's. Now, sometimes we'll kind of push the envelope and show behaviors to change the norms a little bit. But since this was a limited pilot study, we really wanted to listen to what the folks on the post were telling us. So our rigorous scientific adoption process was quite effective. the USERA soldiers who participated in the pilot study reported that those soldiers who strongly agreed that the people in the images look like them, could see themselves taking these types of bystander actions, saying these things, reported that they had a much higher confidence in performing bystander behaviors compared to the soldiers who did not really relate as well to the images. So just recapping lesson 3, I want to reinforce the importance of target audience members seeing themselves, seeing familiar context so that the prevention strategy resonates. And again, this is not a new concept. Product influencers and marketers do this all the time. They know exactly who they are speaking to, and they know the messages that will get those target audience members to buy the products, listen to the music, or watch the television show. The fourth critical lesson that I've learned is the importance of harnessing protective factors. So protective factors decrease the likelihood that individuals will experience violence, and they provide resilience from risk factors. So like any public health problem, we scientifically examine those factors that decrease the likelihood that individuals will be a victim of harmful behaviors or perpetrate harmful behaviors. So identifying protective factors allows us not only to focus on the behaviors we want to stop, but it also lets us focus on those types of environments we want to create. So our approach at the Prevention Innovations Research Center in developing prevention strategies is to emphasize protective factors and think about how we build respectful living, learning, and working environments. So if we only focus on risk factors, we're missing opportunities to strengthen those protective factors. Therefore, we really want to emphasize putting protective factors at the center of our efforts. So just as you're sitting here, I know I've been kind of talking and talking, like if you could just list, or even in your head, some protective factors that you would like to see in your unit, institution, or organization that would help reiterate the prevention strategies you're administering or that you hope to administer. So some of the things that we think about are policies that clearly state all forms of sexual violence are unacceptable, and there are sanctions and repercussions for this type of behavior, and people know about these sanctions and repercussions. There also needs to be clear reporting chains, right? And chains that are followed. Another protective factor is trauma-informed support for people who come forward with reports of harmful behaviors and that they are being supported. And then regular trainings that extend beyond orientation or onboarding and really continue to build community awareness and skills. So what's really important in recapping lesson 4 is that when we harness protective factors, we have the ability to create respectful living, learning, and working environments. So finally, lesson 5 is making sure that your prevention strategy has all 3 components of the prevention equation. So effective prevention includes not only knowledge and awareness, but skill building and skills that people that we're teaching feel comfortable in using, because it's that knowledge and skills that enables people to take action and be able to participate in prevention and making our communities safer. So just 2 examples. So when we think about preventing injuries in car crashes, thanks to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, we know a lot about car crashes in the United States. We know, in fact, that in 2019, 47% of the folks who were killed in US car crashes were not wearing a seatbelt. Okay, so I'm telling you that fact, right? So I'm giving you knowledge. But what if I teach you how to use a seatbelt, right? And what if I also give you some strategies, thinking of those of us who have parents of teenagers, give you some strategies to ask the people in your car to wear their seatbelts as well, right? So I'm teaching you and reminding you to always wear a seatbelt when you're in your car, and ask your passengers to do the same. So because I'm giving you knowledge and I'm giving you the skills to make yourself safe, but also the confidence to ask the other people in your car to wear their seatbelts, I'm giving you the ability to take action to reduce fatalities and injuries and car crashes. So prevention, if I only just gave you the statistic, the knowledge statistic, I'm not doing the full work of prevention. The same thing happens when we look at preventing sexual assault. The most recent numbers were from 2018, and that 20,500 service members reported some type of sexual assault, right? So I can tell you about the problem. That's awareness. We know that sexual assault is a big issue for institutions of higher education, as well as the folks in our military. But what about if I can give you skills where you can be able to identify situations where sexual assault has the potential to occur, is occurring, or has occurred? And then I also work with you so that you can have some strategies in your head to safely intervene in a problematic situation, or to support a survivor in the aftermath of sexual assault. You know how to provide trauma-informed responses, right? So I'm giving you the knowledge, and then I'm giving you some skills, and hopefully you'll feel comfortable taking action to safely intervene, and you'll have a plan to take action and reduce a potential harmful incident. So to recap lesson 5, we need to have all 3 components of the prevention equation: knowledge, skills, and actions to prevent sexual assault. So just to summarize, today I've talked about the importance of moving beyond the individual level of the social ecological model in our prevention efforts, and really leveraging the relational leadership, community, and societal levels, so we engage everyone. Please remember that making someone aware of the problem is not prevention. People need skills and competence to carry out the prevention actions. Also remember there's 3 levels of prevention that require people to have different levels of knowledge and awareness, as well as different skills, so that people can, help make their communities safer. We also need to know our audience. We need to know who we're talking to for prevention to be effective. And in order for prevention efforts to be successful, we need to focus on the protective factors that will reinforce our prevention messaging. And finally, effective prevention requires people to have knowledge, skills, and the confidence to use these skills and knowledge to take action. So I hope this overview has been helpful. Please feel free to reach out in any way that I can provide additional information. And I just really want to thank Joe Storch and the SUNY crew, and Melissa Cohen and Dr. Jess Gallus from Don SAPRO. So thank you all so much.
Dr. Sharyn Potter, thank you so much for always being such a great colleague, such a great scholar and presenter on this. I don't know how many SUNY things you have presented at this point, and how much programs and research we've done together, but it is always a pleasure. I want to welcome back Dr. Gallus, if she is available, mostly just to say a thank you to Dr. Jessica Gallus, to Jess, as well as to Julie, Patrick, and the entire team. We're going to hear from Melissa Cohen tomorrow, but what incredible colleagues we have in the Don SAPRO crew. And if folks who are on knew how much work goes on in the background, you would be astounded. So Jess, thank you. And then I'll have a couple more thank yous.
Thanks so much to you, Joe, and thanks to our phenomenal speakers. It was such an honor to spend the day with this team, and just really appreciate the knowledge that was shared today. And I hope that it was helpful for everyone. So thanks so much.
And I want to give a very quick additional thank you to Phil and Monik and Joelle and Roma and Bridget, who have been keeping the trains running on time for this well over 1,300 person conference for the first day, but especially our great colleague, Morgan Clifford, who has taken on this role and just done a tremendous job. And so Morgan, would you unmute and take us out for the first day, including what everyone's waiting for, the second code. Morgan?